A few years ago, a new potential slasher icon in Art the Clown exploded onto the screen with blood and guts in the original Terrifier. Now, after over a 3-year production, we finally have the sequel, Terrifier 2. What is up, everybody? Welcome to my early review of Terrifier 2. I'm in Austin, Texas right now attending Fantastic Fest. I'm in Sean Chandler's studio, which looks a little bit different than my normal place, but I'm very excited to be able to talk about this film early, and being able to see this premiered at the Fantastic Fest was just an awesome experience. I actually got to watch it in the same theater as Damien Leone, as David Howard Thornton, as some of the other cast members and crew that made this film. They introduced the film, did a Q&A afterwards. I was sitting 2 rows behind Damien Leone and Art the Clown himself. I was sitting just a few seats away from Chris Stuckman. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria! And for a little bit of background on me, I did review the original Terrifier last week. I'll put a card up here if you want to check out all of my thoughts on that film. But it was a movie that I was very much in the middle on. There were some aspects to it, like the practical effects, like the extreme carnage, the look of Art the Clown primarily, that I really liked and thought that there was a lot of potential there. But I also felt that the movie was more of a proof of concept than an actual film. There wasn't really any story, certainly not a lot of character work, if not any character work. It was just kind of a showcase of, look at Art the Clown, look how cool this slasher villain is, and look at all these practical effects. And so where if the first film was the proof of concept, this is where that concept is being let loose. This is where they're showing everything that they want to do, everything that they can do. There was a lot of crowdfunding with this, so this is absolutely a movie that is made for the fans of that original Terrifier, and there's a lot packed into this movie. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. There's a lot more story, there's a lot more character work, there's a protagonist that's brought into here, there is a lot of gore and a lot of kills, like a lot. I described it like this on Twitter: if the original Terrifier was the audition, Terrifier 2 is the stadium show with 7 encores. So starting off with the positives for Terrifier 2, it's that carnage candy baby. If you are somebody that walks into a Terrifier film wanting to see how nasty, how gross, how extreme, and how creative Art the Clown is going to be when he dispatches all of the other poor bastards in this film, this is a movie for you. I mean, where the first film certainly proved that concept and was going for that, the director Damien Leone is somebody who actually creates all of the special effects and has a hand in all of those, so this is his bread and butter, this is his passion. That passion is completely on display in Terrifier 2. Not only is the number of kills bigger in this movie, but the ambition, the scope of the kills is certainly bigger. They walked into this knowing they had to outdo that hacksaw kill, and in my opinion, they certainly did. Some of it is extreme. I mean, extreme feels like a watered down word to describe where this film goes in certain scenes. So if you're somebody that is here to watch people get fucked up, Terrifier 2 fucks people up. I actually enjoyed the character of Art the Clown a lot more in this film as well. Now, he was something that I was on the fence with in the first film. As much as everybody really just wanted to immediately hand this guy the crown for new horror icon, I was somebody that was very hesitant with that. I like the look of him. I like some of the physical performance that David Howard Thornton brought to it. Certainly a very nasty, gruesome character, but there was so much about him that was so nondescript and just so little information about who this thing is, what this thing is, and it was just kind of a showcase for how cool that character can be and how brutal and violent he can be, and I just needed more before I was ready to hand him that crown. I'm a lot more comfortable handing him that crown after this film. There was a lot more done to bring that real sick, dark humor out of the character. David Howard Thornton did a really great job at bringing a lot of the physical comedy to this one. While there's certainly some uncomfortably comedic moments in the first film, there was a lot more in this one. And maybe it just helps that I saw it in a crowd full of people that really wanted to see this, so all the moments that hit really big. But as gruesome and as dark and as depraved as this movie gets, it's balanced out by a lot of very simple, just physical gags and physical humor, because Art's a character, like I said before, that's kind of that happy medium between the silent stalker and the charismatic killer, to where he doesn't talk, but he's got a lot of facial expressions and the mime thing going on. And I just think he had much more fun, Damien Leone, in writing the character, and David Howard Thornton in portraying the character in this film. And as an audience member, I had a lot more fun watching Art just unleash carnage on these people for 2.5 hours. Probably the biggest improvement in this film for me personally was that there's actually a good bit of story and character work in this one, and that's what I was sorely missing in that first film. Art was very much the focus and the main character of the first film. It was just about showing him go from person to person and enact this new nasty version of carnage, and there's plenty of that here, but there's also some characters that you follow. You're following this girl Sienna, and she also has her younger brother. They're high school students, so just being the fact that they're kids, you kind of want to root for them more, and you want to invest in their hopeful triumph over this situation. There's not as much hopelessness in this film because of that. You actually have some hope that these characters can figure out what Art is, who he is, and how to defeat him, and I just enjoyed that journey much more than just watching him lay waste to people for 90 minutes in the first film. And while it's not a movie that's shooting for the stars with its narrative, it's not shooting for the stars with its characters either, I think that it knows the type of film that it wants to be, and it certainly achieves that with giving you just enough. There's just enough story there to keep you invested, to give you a journey to go on. And even just specifically the character of Sienna, who is our protagonist, you really enjoy following her because she's a strong character. You get just enough knowledge about who she is and some of her past trauma and how she's kind of rising above that now, that you carry that over into her rising above this situation. And the way that they frame her very much as kind of being like the Tommy Jarvis of this film, I think was a good move. When you have somebody like Art the Clown that is just a very larger-than-life character, that's a very standout villain that just commands the screen, you got to put a lot of work into the heroic nemesis of that character to make them match the on-screen kind of appeal to Art the Clown, and I think they do a really good job at doing that with Sienna, and with as little subtlety as possible. For as blunt as this movie is with what it's trying to do with the gore and just the excess, they do the same thing with the character work in Sienna, and I think that it led to a lot of fun moments and really had you pumped up for a third act where these two characters are going to come blow to blow. The score returns from the first film with a little bit of added flavor, and just like with the first film, I really dig what they're going for here. It's got that throwback electronic feel to it. I think it adds a really good atmosphere to the movie. It's still not quite to the point where Art the Clown has this signature little theme or the signature tune that I think the character deserves and potentially will get in an eventual third film, but again, with the first film, I think that old school kind of electronic dread score really does add a lot for that vibe that they're going for. And finally, there was a number of moments in this movie that were very cool nods to previous horror films. I'm sure that there's more that I didn't even catch, and I was almost going to ask Damien Leone about it, but I really want to watch the film and try to find them myself whenever this does come to home video. So there was like a musical cue right out of Halloween that all you Halloween nuts are going to love. There was a kill that to me was very reminiscent purposefully of the original Maniac. There was even a sequence that to me was like straight out of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which just charmed the hell out of me that they're referencing and kind of winking to Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Not really a movie in that franchise that I see given a whole lot of love to, and so it charmed me as a Freddy fan to see a sequence that is very much inspired by that, even down to the musical choice. So even for horror fans, that if you're not there just for Terrifier, if you're there just for the love of horror and the love of slashers specifically, there's a lot of cool little treats throughout this movie that you're going to enjoy. Overall, guys, as far as positives, as far as just what this movie is, if I was to sum it all up in a word, it's excess. Everything that the first film did, this one does in excess. The gore, the kills, the mean streak, the depravity, all of that is in excess. Art the Clown's personality is in excess. The character arcs and the character development that we get with the new protagonist is absolutely in excess, as well as the runtime of the film, which is 2 hours and 20 minutes, which that was the discussion that me and Sean were having for 2 days before we saw this film, is what the hell is a 2.5 hour Terrifier movie gonna look like? If you told me that Freddy or Chucky was coming out with a 2.5 hour movie, I would go, oh my God, why? What are they gonna do there? So with that being said, we'll move on to the negatives. And I do think that 2 hours and 20 minutes is a bit much. It's a movie that I didn't really feel like it was dragging a lot until the third act, and there was a lot of kind of repeating the same beat in the third act with just a bunch of sequences that are the same thing but a little bit different, that certainly felt like they could have tightened that up a bit. There's other sequences throughout the movie you could see easily being removed and not losing a whole lot as far as the momentum of the movie. But this is very much something that's kind of akin to like Zack Snyder's Justice League, to where this is a movie for fans, only for the fans. There was a lot of crowdfunding here, and so I think they made the conscious choice of, if the fans want it, if the fans are funding it, then we're just going to give them everything. We're going to give them 2.5 hours of what they want. Even if the best version of this film is probably closer to an hour and 50 minutes or 2 hours, this is the extreme director's everything in the kitchen sink cut. But it's just a 2 hour and 20-minute movie that I don't think is going to have the most rewatch value and the most replayability, because it is such an excessive experience, not only with what you're seeing, but how much of it you're getting. And finally, honestly, the biggest issue that I had with this film, to the point where it kind of dropped it a half a star, maybe even a full star for me, is that with the added story elements in this, there is a lot of central mysteries and central things that are built for intrigue in this that are hinting towards some answers, that are hinting towards maybe an explanation or an origin of Art the Clown, that are hinting towards the ties between Art the Clown and the protagonist. And the movie continuously, throughout 2 hours and 20 minutes, keeps bringing up this thing, keeps bringing up these questions, to the point where it seems very much like we're going to get those answers in the third act, or right after we get the climax of the film, some things are going to start to be answered. And it didn't really answer any of them. Like, you walk into this film with a bunch of questions from Terrifier 1, and they kind of answer one question, which is whether or not Art is supernatural or not. And everything else that you had question-wise walking into this, you now have more questions when you walk out. Like, there's so many things in here to where they continuously go back to it and build this expectation in the audience that it's going to tie together somehow in the third act. It's so in your face that it has to be a part of that narrative for this movie to feel narratively complete. And they just leave it. They just leave it up in the air, intentionally, purposefully. I mean, Damien Leone even said this in the Q&A. They're leaving a lot of things open for an eventual third film, but you got to answer some things. Otherwise, this second film, this middle chapter, doesn't feel like it's complete. It doesn't feel like the most satisfying version of this story, because so many things were brought up that are now just going to be left in the ether until whenever the hell we get a third film. And I just didn't feel like that was the best approach. I felt like that left it on kind of an unsatisfying note as far as story goes. And when you have a 2 hour and 20-minute film that feels like the story didn't have enough time to be completed, or there wasn't enough there to bring the story to its fully satisfying version, that's frustrating. And that's something that's disappointing. And unfortunately, because you come to that realization as the credits roll, as you're walking out of the film and go, oh, well, I guess we're not going to get any answers for that anytime soon. It's not a good note to leave the film on. So as somebody that was very much appreciating how much more story and how much more character work and a lot more narrative creativity that was brought into this film, it was a big disappointment for me to walk out not getting any of the answers that they teased me with for 2 hours and 20 minutes. But overall, guys, as somebody that was very much on the fence and take it or leave it with the first Terrifier, I enjoyed this one significantly more. I'm sure a good bit of that is just the experience of seeing it at Fantastic Fest in the company of the people that I saw it with, but I had a really good time with this sequel. I think if you're somebody that did not like the first Terrifier, there's potential that you'll enjoy this one more, and I think most people that do like or possibly even love the first Terrifier are mostly going to enjoy this one more, unless you're somebody that just does not like story and characters, of which I don't understand your point of view whatsoever. But nonetheless, Terrifier 2, blood-soaked goodness as far as I'm concerned. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for the rest of my 2022 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my review of the original Terrifier up here if you're an Art the Clown fan. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any reviews coming out for the rest of Fantastic Fest. And as always, guys, remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean that you have to be.